every executive, every leader in any industry should be using AI at work as a thought partner, and frankly at home as well, in terms of medium to high stakes personal decisions.
Welcome to Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting, where we bring you candid conversations and stories with the thinkers, doers, and builders behind some of the most successful digital products and experiences in the world, from concept to execution.
Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast. I'm Nathan Isaacs, Senior Manager for Content Production at UserTesting. And joining us today as host is Michael Domanic, UserTesting's Head of AI. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, everybody.
And our guest today is Greg Shove. Greg is the CEO of Section, an online business school for the age of AI. He is a 6-time founder, investor, and AI thought leader. He helps executives leverage AI as a strategic partner, driving innovation and decision-making. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Fantastic, Greg. It's great to have you. Look, you've been a founder multiple times and have seen major tech shifts firsthand. So what was the moment that made you realize generative AI wasn't just another trend, but something that could fundamentally change how businesses operate?
Yeah. Well, Michael, first of all, let's go back to February the 1st, 2023. That was the moment I was playing with ChatGPT Plus. And I was like, wow, this could be what keeps me working. I want to keep working. I live and work in Silicon Valley, the most ageist work environment in the world. If you're not 28 in a hoodie, you're an idiot. I'm 63. I type with 2 fingers. And in fact, I've started 7 companies because I started one more last year. And I just thought, okay, this was going to be my cognitive edge, the way that I would sort of keep me sharp and keep working. And it was kind of that hour, actually, that day, that hour that I decided to pivot my company, Section, which I'm the CEO of, to become an AI school for the age of AI. And so kind of all in from that moment on.
So, Greg, what were you doing? What did you say, February 1st of 2023? Like, what was your prompt and what was the output?
Yeah, great question. I'm not sure I remember. Probably a bit of both, like work and personal. So I can imagine I was impressed in the early days with kind of thought partnership with AI, asking, medical questions or travel questions, things like that. So, life at home, right? And then life at work. One of the early use cases that we used at work was we asked AI to pretend to be a board member. And we sent our board deck, the deck that we send to our human board members, we would also provide that, and we still do. We've done this every quarter, actually, since then. We provide the board deck to, ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, and basically ask the AI to adopt the persona of an aggressive board member, of a conservative board member, and really kind of get us ready for board meetings. And as I said, we've done it every board meeting since. The AIs score about 85 to 90% of the humans, meaning we compare what the humans tell us in the actual board meeting to what the AIs told us before the board meeting. And AI is getting most of what the humans are telling us. Not everything. And by the way, AIs don't write checks yet. You still need board members, at least if you want the money. But if you're a startup, but that to me was a pretty eye-opening use case, particularly for leaders. I think a lot of leaders think that they don't use AI. AI is for the content marketers or AI is for the software engineers. That other people do that kind of hands-on work that needs AI. But that's not my point of view. My point of view is any medium to high stakes decision, every executive, every leader in any industry should be using AI at work as a thought partner, and frankly at home as well, in terms of medium to high stakes personal decisions.
So I've heard you tell that story before about, using AI in a board meeting. And I've also heard you talk a lot about, how executives should be using AI a lot more, but maybe they're not as much as we would like to see. So what are the barriers? What's stopping those individuals from fully embracing and integrating this?
Yeah, I think a lot of things, Michael. I think that maybe not executives, but maybe but most of us have a fair degree of anxiety and sort of concern about AI, understandably, right? And all the research, and there was some new research just this past week from Pew Research about the levels of anxiety, about job loss, about job degradation, and so on. And so again, not surprising if you get your news about AI from the media's job is to outrage us and scare us and get us to click. And so really the narrative about AI has been this AGI, this superpower, this coming agent that's going to take our job. And by the way, you and I were both at the AI conference last week in Las Vegas, HumanX. You might have noticed that one AI vendor on the conference floor, stop hiring humans was their sort of tagline, right across the front of their booth. And Mark Benioff at Salesforce is talking about Agentforce all the time as a replacement to humans. So not surprising. People are anxious. That's one. They're not getting properly trained. It's clear. And again, we've looked at research and we've done our own research at Section about, employee satisfaction with training about AI. And there is no satisfaction about the training, meaning most employees aren't getting trained properly. I think most companies, Michael, deploy this thinking it's software. I think it gets bought by the head of IT or the CTO or the head of technology. And I think there's this misconception that AI is like software, like an ERP or a CRM or, some sort of marketing automation software. And it's nothing like software. It doesn't behave like software. We don't interact with it like software. It hallucinates. It gives us different answers to the same question and so on. So I think that just slows adoption. There's not a real appreciation for what we're provisioning to employees is some sort of a teammate or coworker or thought partner, and it won't always generate great results. Some days it does, and some days it doesn't. I'd say the final thing too, Michael, is overly restrictive AI policies and guidelines, particularly around data. AI to me is not really useful unless you can use your data, whether that be your, at home in terms of your own medical information, right, your own medical records, or at the office, right? You want to load in your business plan. You want to load in your marketing plan, your product roadmap, and then kind of work with AI, have a conversation with AI to, help you answer the questions or work on the tasks that you need to accomplish. And so I think a lot of companies have had this somewhat irrational, frankly, fear about data privacy and kind of corporate data. And so employees are scared to use AI and certainly scared to load up their company information, which I think robs AI a lot of its potential and sort of power.
Yeah, I agree with you on all of that. And at Section, so you're offering businesses content courses that are going to help their employees upskill and move through this transformation. And I should mention that UserTesting, in full disclosure, is a customer of Section. We are using your content for the same purpose, right? To help us enable that transformation. So kind of putting the focus on your courses, what are those in-demand AI-related courses that your students are enrolling in? What do you see resonating with businesses with the content that you're offering them?
Yeah, I think it's probably what you would expect, Michael, and I'm sure what most of the employees at UserTesting will take advantage of as well, which is if you're new to AI, you want to get the basics. So, basic prompting and how to get the most out of your conversations with AI. And then, of course, the advanced version of that course. So basic and advanced. Pretty quickly after that, employees want to make it relevant to themselves. So they want to take the course about how to build your own use cases, how to kind of do your own workflow audit, if you will, on yourself or on your team, and then find the use cases where there's the highest return to be using AI. And that means basically functional courses. So AI for marketers, AI for finance people, AI for HR, and so on. So we have a growing catalog of functional classes as well. And then finally, some of those leadership and strategy classes. So if you're leading a team that's implementing AI, how do you do that? And how do you change the workflows of the team? How do you get the team ready to adopt and deploy AI? And then how do you set AI strategy? So we have one class that's really sort of a classic strategy class for leaders so they can figure out a framework to prioritize and greenlight AI initiatives.
Yeah, so you have a pretty good look at what businesses are doing and where this is being adopted within businesses. So is there a specific role type that you're finding is leaning in more than others? Is there a specific part of businesses like marketing or sales or engineers that are leaning in more towards this transformation and the content through Section?
Yeah, yes, yes, and yes. I mean, it's all the language intensive functions, right? So we know it started with software engineers, and I consider them, Michael, the canaries in the coal mine. I think as leaders, we should all be studying carefully how software engineering teams are using AI and their kind of the coding co-pilots, whether that be Claude, Sonnet 3.7, or a co-pilot like Devon or Klein, these kinds of AI tools for engineers. Because what's happening there is going to happen, in my opinion, in the rest of knowledge work in the coming couple of years. And so certainly it's language intensive functions. So that means software engineering, code is a language, and then it is marketing, it is sales, it is obviously customer success or customer service. The idea of chatbots replacing humans and or augmenting humans for customer service is an obvious use case. That's a language intensive function. Quite frankly, it's a function where we trained humans to be more like bots, which is customer service agents, right? And manage to kind of, quantity targets and time to resolution targets. Really, we kind of mechanize that work if you think about it. It makes sense to me that that's an obvious place where AI is going to augment and then really replace human work. So it is those language intensive functions. Typically, we see HR, finance, and the leaders lagging in terms of AI adoption. That makes sense. They're more risk averse. And again, they're not as language intensive, but I would say with the recent releases of products like OpenAI's deep research, and the more broadly the reasoning models that these frontier AI labs are releasing, I think we'll see that this AI is getting good at math, and other functions like the HR and finance functions will get real gains from AI.
Yeah. So one point that you touched on a little earlier that I want to put a little bit more of a spotlight on is the fear and hesitation that folks have. So businesses like UserTesting and businesses like those that you work with at Section, we're pretty serious about AI transformation, right? But we have a lot of folks in our organization who are understandably and justifiably, a bit nervous about all of this. So what is the right response for organizations and leaders who are serious about AI transformation? Like, what is the right balance between pushing for that transformation while recognizing that this could be disruptive to roles?
Yeah, I'd first of all say, every company and situation is context specific. If you're working in an industry where AI is not yet going to be widely deployed, maybe because of regulatory reasons, you've got more time. If you work in a language intensive function or business in a language intensive industry like software development, AI is coming, faster than you think. So I do think part of this is being intentional around the pace that you want to go as a leader with your organization. I'm okay if people say intentionally I'm going slow, versus I'm putting my head in the sand, and not worrying about it. Like, be thoughtful about it. For many of us, we're going to have to move fast. Certainly in my business, which is education, online education, content development, as you said, we're moving very quickly. I don't expect Michael to be creating courses, in a couple of years. I really don't. Meaning it'll be AI coaches. And we're releasing a product next month called Prof AI that will really be the way I think almost all learning is delivered in the future will be through AI coaches and AI tutors. So I think the right way to talk about it as a leader is honestly, and this is what I say to Section, and in fact I said this on Monday at our All Hands, we are adopting AI even faster at Section, both in our internal workflows and in our product roadmap. And that will do one of three things to each team. Some teams will get bigger because they get such leverage from AI and they have such an impact on the business that in fact putting more humans into that team with the AI is good for the business, right? You can imagine that scenario happening in all kinds of different teams in different industries. Salespeople, for example, if they're more capable with AI, you're going to want more salespeople likely because they drive revenue. Some teams will stay the same size and they'll get more done with AI depending on the team. And some teams will be smaller. I don't think dramatically smaller, but I think in some cases they will be smaller. And I'm not sure, what's going to happen to each team. And that's what you have to say as a leader. We're not sure, but let's do this together and sort of be driving that change versus being forced into that change and kind of playing catch up. So I think that's my advice to leaders. My advice to employees is similar, like adopt it yourself sooner and really get comfortable and really get good at knowing where AI can help and where AI doesn't help. Expose AI's weaknesses. And so you know where it's worth working with AI and where AI is not going to give you an assist. And just, be at that edge, it's just a little closer to that edge, I guess, as an individual. So you'll see what's happening. Again, don't put your head in the sand. I think this is coming faster than we realize.
Yeah, I think that's some helpful advice. And I would agree with you. I think that's how we talk about it here at UserTesting as well. So putting the focus a little bit on the folks listening to this podcast. So many of those individuals are, people who are constantly exploring ways to elevate their customer experiences. So from your perspective, what should businesses be thinking about? Like, how would they leverage AI tools to deliver exceptional customer experiences? Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think to step back, I think what we're seeing is a fundamental change in how customer experiences are delivered. And I think the best example of that for me as a consumer, frankly, is travel planning. We all know how to plan a trip when we're online using a browser, right? We have a lot of tabs open. We've got TripAdvisor and Expedia and, all kinds of websites. And we're kind of, just spending probably an hour or two getting to a decision around a weekend trip or something like that. And when you do that with AI, we don't yet trust AI to the extent we need to probably make, follow all the recommendations of AI. But I think we're getting close. When you do that with AI, plan your own sort of vacation, you realize how frictionless the experience is when compared to the old way, because you've got one conversation with one UI, with one source of knowledge or, one expert. And that really, to me, for all of us who are building consumer experiences, that to me is I think the most dramatic change or paradigm shift for consumer experiences, because of generative AI, which is interface friction will not be tolerated. Consumers, particularly younger, right? Consumers, the AI native generation, they're growing up in a world where they won't tolerate that kind of friction. They won't look at the Amazon product page. Talk about a page full of friction, right? There's the product, sure. Somewhere in there is the product, and there's ads, and there's sponsored, and there's all kinds of information on that page. And a lot of cognitive load is therefore pushed to the consumer when they reach that page to make a decision. I just think that, again, in a few years, we'll look back at that product page on Amazon's website and say, what were we thinking? That's just loaded with friction and loaded with sort of cognitive burden for the consumer. And AI can really wipe that away. And I get it. I can see why Amazon's not in any rush to build that page. I can see why Google's been, rolling out these changes slowly to search results and so on, because it really does threaten their business models, as you might expect. But there's a much better consumer experience around the corner when it's generated by AI.
Yeah. So your example of vacation planning reminds me of some of the demos that we've seen from Anthropic's computer use model, OpenAI's operator model. Those are kind of like the truly autonomous agentic AI models that go out and do the things for you instead of you having to do them. So not only is that reducing the friction of you having to sift through all the different travel websites, it's just doing it for you, right? There's ideally no friction there. Do you have any thoughts of what should businesses be thinking about right now if we are actually going to quickly enter into a world where autonomous agents are doing a lot of the things that we as humans do today?
I just think you got to stand up a lot of pilots. I think you need to be prototyping like crazy. And I don't mean toys, meaning I don't mean like the AI, powered kiosk for Burger King or whoever it is. Like, forget the AI toys. That's just noise, press releases, and a waste of time. I think what businesses ought to be doing is go in two places: internally in their internal workflows and in their customer experiences, whether they sell a product or a service. I don't think it matters. And anything you deliver to customers, and just, pick off what look like good fits for an AI prototype and expose that prototype to either consumers or internal employees, and just learn fast, right? And know that I think this is a lot like drilling for oil. Maybe I finished watching Landman, so I've got oil in my brain, but there's going to be a lot of dry wells. A lot of empty holes, because that's where AI is right now. A lot of agents won't work, or they're going to crap out when they try to do the transaction. That's okay. That's not a reason to dismiss AI. I think a lot of people, Michael, either consumers or companies, are bouncing off AI because they do have these false starts and they do have these dry holes and they do bounce off, and they're like, oh, it's not ready for prime time. That's a mistake, I think. Some of this is ready for prime time, and some of it is not. And I think you need that kind of resilience and that sort of experiment mindset just to get going. And some of this is going to work, some of it won't. But I would not stand still,
Yeah, I think the oil drilling example, that metaphor, really that feels like it hits home for me. I agree that not all the experiments are going to work, but those that do are going to produce enough value to make the ones that didn't work worth it, right? So one of the things, Greg, that you and I have talked about is who within an organization should be driving this mission. I think that no organization has kind of like figured this out really well, or maybe a few have, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, if an organization comes to you and says, like, we're serious about AI transformation, we want to do this in our products, we want to do this in our business, who should we get to drive this for us? What would your answer be?
Yeah, my answer would be it's probably three people combined into one, if you could do that. And if you can't, then, pick one, the other two support. And the three are the technologist. You need someone to buy the AI, connect it to the data sources, the company data, secure it all, and get it in the hands of employees. So that's the technologist, CTO, head of engineering, whoever owns that responsibility inside the org. The change manager. Who is the person that is best at not just the upskilling, but the change management required? Because it's really about change management. It's about getting humans less anxious and more confident and frankly, more willing to accept and work with the AI. Some of this latest research about employees revealed that some employees are actively resisting. They're fighting back because their perception is, the AI is coming for their jobs. It kind of reminds me of, people in San Francisco putting cones on the top of Waymos so the Waymos get confused and can't drive, right? If employees start doing that, that's not a good thing, right? AI is not going to land inside your organization successfully. So you need the change manager. And the third really is the business person, and the business person who understands the workflows, understands how work is done and or how products get built, depending on the kind of company you are, right? So, understands where AI is going to basically insert itself successfully in those workflows or product roadmaps. I think that's the lead person. This is not a technology challenge, primarily. I think there's sure some technology challenges, but I think the primary challenge here is knowing where to insert AI in the right places and then getting the humans to support that effort. When you think about deploying an LLM specifically, I think agents are different. When you think about deploying an LLM like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, it's only as good as the humans that work with it. So if they're resisting, if they're anxious, if they're not willing to learn, then the LLM will not deliver the output and therefore the productivity gain, the ROI that clients need. I think that's why a lot of companies will struggle with their LLM deployments, is that they just haven't done the change management. They haven't done the upskilling. They haven't really got the humans ready for working with LLM. I do think some companies will skip that phase and try to go just to agents. Because when you go to agents, you're essentially trying to take the human out of the loop. Right. And put them maybe at the beginning or the end, but not in the middle. When you deploy an LLM, you are putting an LLM in the hands of every employee. I would assume that's my recommendation. Give every employee access to a full featured LLM that can access company data. Maybe not all the data, but can access, enough of the company data to be useful. I think every organization should do that. Some will not, and or some will struggle doing that because of that anxiety, resistance, lack of training, lack of change management. And again, agents, I think, do offer, understandably, some upside around can we take the human out of that loop and just really make it frictionless in terms of the workflow, and get the output we want. So we'll see both.
Yeah, I think the three personas that you describe, that I would agree with that 100%. I think a skill that I see a lot of businesses under indexing on when choosing who is the right individual or group of individuals to help drive this. So that skill that they're under indexing on, I think, is creativity. This requires creative application to figure out where does this fit into all of the different roles, all of the different, functions within the business. And I think the reason why that's so important is because using LLMs, deploying LLMs LLMs are just very abstract, right? Like we don't know fully how they work. We don't know fully where they apply. So we need someone, a creative individual can help translate that abstraction layer into something that feels real and concrete for a lot of different personas within the business. That probably fits into like that transformation person that you described. Whether you agree or disagree with that, like,
Yeah, I do. I mean, I agree. Meaning, you want someone to really can span the business. It's the Achilles heel and superpower of AI. The superpower of AI, generative AI specifically, and something like a chatbot like ChatGPT is that it can do a lot of things. It doesn't sit in one function, right? It doesn't just help the marketers. It helps pretty much everybody potentially in the organization. So you do need someone that does have that sort of critical and creative thinking around, where should we best deploy the AI and in what kind of use cases, right? And that's sort of its Achilles heel, because we're used to software that does one thing really well. And we're used to deploying solutions that go into a specific workflow or specific function. And this thing, AI, generative AI, just sort of kind of goes everywhere. And frankly, does some things really well and other things not so, not great. And so it's sort of it's like humans in this respect, right? Our superpowers, when taken to the extreme, are our weaknesses. They're our Achilles heel. And I think this is the case with AI as well.
Okay, so aside from the obvious LLMs, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, what's an interesting AI tool that you're working with that has provided you with a ton of value?
Yeah, you just named them. I used to play around more, with like writing AI or image generation AI more for fun or for party tricks. Frankly, I can't keep up with the capabilities that are in the base models, meaning Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Anthropic's Claude. So I'm more interested in, frankly, mastering projects and mastering no-code bots like GPTs or even operator functions. So I've got a day job, Michael, like you, and so I never have as much time as I want or need to keep up. So I've decided just to frankly stay more focused on the models and exploit all the capabilities that they're releasing, because they're on a torrid pace in terms of releasing new capabilities. OpenAI's deep research being one example where I've been using that a lot the last few weeks. And I'm sure I'm not yet even, kind of maximizing its value. So I got enough just with those models.
Okay. So what you just described is a pretty overwhelming landscape, right? Think about someone who has not quite dipped their toe into the water yet and hears this conversation and says, all right, I really need to get started. What is that starting point?
I think it's ChatGPT and a few hours and take a course, and email me and I'll get you a coupon for a free section course if you're listening to this podcast, or we'll put it in the show notes. I think the right thing to do is get that AI. It's the Swiss Army knife for AI, I think, for generative AI, ChatGPT, and just get going there and just start to use it. And if you can't use it at work for whatever reason, then use it at home. And, get up that learning curve. Get up that learning curve where you're really comfortable loading up PDFs and talking to AI about these decisions or about your workflows. Experiment with it. Have fun with it. Create some images. Make a song on Suno. Whatever it is that kind of floats your boat, right? Get a sense of the power and limitations of these technologies. And I think you'll do that in a few hours, and it'll be clear to you where it's going to add value to your life. And then go there, and spend your time on those use cases.
Greg, that's great advice. So for links to everything that we talked about, visit usertesting.com/podcast. Greg, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoy all of our conversations. So how does someone learn more about you, your thought leadership, and the work that Tina's doing?
Yeah, I think the best place to go is gregshove.com, GregShove, like shove, but we say it's shove.com, and everything about me is there. And my day job is I'm the CEO of sectionai.com, which is, and we're proud to have you, Michael, and UserTesting as a customer. And so, that's another place to find me, of course.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Greg.
Thank you, Michael.